continues on the show tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the judiciary and the role that, they're going to play. We saw the Supreme Court sitting today for the first time. What are your thoughts on that ruling that was delivered? And is it some sort of precursor? Should the Supreme Court be needed in the event of a presidential dispute? It was in the case against, to determine the nomination or the validity of Koyo, of ODM in Muhoroni. Well, the reverse would have been interesting because it would have meant, what? Yeah. Postponement of the parliamentary elections in Muhoroni constituency. What were your thoughts on that today?
Let me just say this for the record, and without any fear of contradiction. If you look at the institutions that have consistently prepared for this election, and the institution that has been able to claw back on public confidence that it somehow lost as a result of 2013 election is the judiciary. Immediately after the 2013 election, the judiciary made, the Chief Justice then, Dr. Willie Mutunga, transformed the Judiciary Working Committee on Election into a permanent Judiciary Committee on Elections. At a time when everybody in this country was not thinking about lessons of 2013 and securing a credible process in 2017, including IEBC itself, by the way, everybody was napping. The judiciary initiated the process that consistently began to look at ways of securing and strengthening the electoral process in this country. And that, if you look at the rulings and the intervention, how the judiciary has guided this electoral process up to where we have reached, including the finality of the vote at the polling and the constituency level. And by the way, the IEBC opposed those progressive processes that the judiciary made a determination on. I can look at the future and look at 2017 and say for a fact that the only part of the reason for hope and optimism is actually the conduct of the judiciary. But on this particular case, yes, the Supreme Court met today for the first time, and they gave a ruling that upheld the decision of the Court of Appeal. Yeah. It was essentially on two things. One, the petitioner, which was Ayecholu, did not raise any substantial constitutional issue that required the interpretation of the Supreme Court. But also they pointed out that we are 2 days to the election. You cannot now bring a petition of this nature, which is clearly intended to disrupt the electoral process. The only problem that I have with it, and this is a reform question, is that a cardinal principle in election dispute resolution is one of finality and finality of decision and expeditious resolution. Right. If you look at our Constitution, the way it is organized, the appeals of every other election goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Yeah. It doesn't have to be that way. It should actually terminate at the level of the political parties dispute tribunal, and maybe the High Court can exercise the appellate jurisdiction. But in Kenya, the way our Constitution and election dispute resolution is structured is that it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. That is why the Supreme Court dealt with many of the elective offices, whereas the responsibility of the Supreme Court is that it has exclusive original jurisdiction on the presidential petition. Right. And I think we should leave it at that. But that is a reform issue for the future. Okay. I'd like us to, because we have 10 minutes, I want us to talk about another very important conversation that I think has prevailed on social media, and that is the peace versus justice conversation. So I don't know if we can, tackle it in 10 minutes. I'd like to start with you, Barak, and then we'll come to you, Professor Kagwanja. So, peace versus justice. And there's been a lot of calls for peace during the election. And there's some that say, why are we calling for peace? We're not in a state of war. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg conversation when it comes to peace and justice? And, suddenly some say, we don't go back to what happened in 2007. But others say, if we have a free, fair, credible election, then the calls for peace don't make sense because there will be peace if, the election is free and fair.
Society like ours, you go to church and the first thing they do is they play the national anthem as a plea for peace. Then you sing Kenya Kipenzi Changu, so that people are able to perhaps comport themselves in a peaceful manner. And you have all these adverts and you have all these pleas. It's an indication already that there is no peace. Our hearts are troubled. And if we are troubled, there's no peace. If there's a semblance of peace, it's a fragile peace. And ours starts becoming a very fragile state that requires just a bit of tinkering with, and it will collapse. So it means that something is awfully wrong. But peace is not an independent variable. Peace is a variable that depends on other things being right. Mm-hmm. In this particular context, we're talking about elections, particularly within the Kenyan and African context. You are saying that let us have an open, free, fair, and just election. Like Felix has kept saying, it should be a process that is so transparent that the losers can see very clearly that they have lost. They understand why they have lost. If they do not understand why they have lost mercifully in this particular context, I see that we have got a judiciary that has proven, as we have discussed a few moments ago, that it can be relied upon. And I want to believe that if nobody else gets their thing right, Kenyans will trust the judiciary to give them a correct verdict. That if somebody has lost the election, and we saw that in 2013, they went to the judiciary, and the judiciary upheld whoever had won and said, this person has won. The ones who had lost said, we do not agree with them, but we accept the verdict. That is the way it should be.
Okay. Solomon Nambuku says, similarly, with peace, it's not campaigned for, it's a spontaneity from justice. Prof?
I think the debate about peace and justice is a fair issue, particularly in nations that are seen to be in conflict. And in all these cases, and I'm invoking President Thabo Mbeki and Professor Mahamud Mamdani in an article commenting on what needs to be done in Sudan when there was a lot of pressure to bring the International Criminal Court to deal with the issues of justice and so on. They said, you know, situations like these ones do not basically require that kind of intervention because these are issues of peace. Now, why didn't we have observers in Rhodes? We have about 5,000 plus observers in Kenya observing the Kenyan election. Why did we have even a quarter of that number in Somalia in February this year when they were doing the presidential elections? Because there's no peace. So what one is saying is that peace is indispensable. It is the ultimate, because when you have peace, judicial systems can operate and pursue justice. And you will have the freedom to walk into the court and seek justice. But when there is no peace, in other words, the opposite of peace is anarchy. When there is anarchy, there is total insecurity and breakdown. You cannot even start to talk about justice. What justice is it? You have the law of nature.
When there's no justice, there can be no peace.
Because there can't be.
No, there can't be. Because peace is not the absence of violence. Peace.
Barack, we lived for 30 years under Daniel Moi and the President Kenyatta first, and others at the one-party state. There was no justice, but there was peace.
No, there was no peace.
What is the definition of peace, do you think? Is peace mere the absence of war?
No, that's really, if we have to get to the peace, then we go back to the so-called, human security.
There's something
where
called
from the
negative peace, which as a professor of social science, he understands that there is fragility. That when you look at something like the Kenyan state, it's actually a few steps, only a few short steps away from the Somali state.
Who?
Yes, you're talking about a fragile state.
That's not true. Kenya is not.
May I be heard, please? You're talking about a fragile state.
You're talking about a country
you're talking about a country in which people are praying and pleading all the time. Yeah. If it's not fragile, why are we saying all the time, we want peace, let's vote peacefully? The institutions that are charged with the responsibility of delivering free, fair, just, and credible elections should just deliver that.
Okay.
But and there will be no,
let's hear from you, Prof.
And there will be no issues.
Right.
Yvonne, the prayer for peace in this country is not new. May we dwell in unity, peace, and liberty. That's our, and that was in 1963.
Justice be our shield.
Why are you omitting justice be our shield and
that's
defender?
okay. I'm moving that.
And defender.
All right.
And then after justice be our shield and defender.
All right. Let's.
You come to
Can I finish?
Peace and unity. Let's hear from
I was
Prof.
making a point that it is not the first time we are praying for peace. The whole of the post-independent period, peace has been an anchor. And I think we legitimately ask, do you just need peace alone? The whole debate about constitutional reform and all that was about pairing peace together with justice. But the problem that we are having now, and the mentality that is being pumped into our public debates, is that if we don't have justice the way you want, peace doesn't matter.
No,
and that's what drew us
justice
into,
can never be the way you want.
That's how it was. That is how
justice
2007.
So that's your interpretation?
Not in the interpretation.
Okay.
It's my experience.
Okay.
The 2008 January, no peace, no this, no peace that, no peace this, without this, was basically an incitement that go out and seek justice. Peace doesn't matter. And somebody wrote an article, and I responded to it. So it's not something that we are saying in hidden places. Okay. Somebody said, if such and such thing happen, Kenya will ban. Will not buy your peace.
All right, be a little bit more explicit with the such and such and so and so. You're referring to David Ndii?
Yeah, and David Ndii
his tweet?
Ban,
okay.
And then in the same article, he went on to say, this time round, we are not going to bed to your calls of peace.
Okay.
You see that?
I'd like to give you the final word in just about a minute as we conclude.
I maintain very seriously that if the elections are free and fair and credible and just, then there is absolutely no call for peace. Kenya will be peaceful. In 2008 election in Ghana that we referred to, that had 23,000, that had a difference of 23,000 between the ruling party that lost and the opposition, Ghana never went to the streets. And at a time when Kenya and Zimbabwe had actually gone to the street, citing unjust process. Ask yourself one question. Why do we Kenyans, by their very nature, are a very peaceful lot? But why do we, in every year around election, the call for peace increased tenfold?
Okay.
What we need is a credible, free and fair election, and the Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides for that. And
that is a good question to leave it at this evening. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Felix Owor, Barack Muluka, and Professor Peter Kagwanja. On Kivumbi 2017, remember, this is your official election station. Our coverage continues. Tomorrow morning, you want to catch up with our morning crew for all the very latest, even as we count down now just literally hours to the 8th of August, 6 in the morning when the polls open. And we will be here to cover that for you in the way only we can here on KTN News, a 24-hour news channel. I will be back again tomorrow, so I'll see you. It's going to be a busy time ahead, but make sure you stay safe and start to think wisely now that all the political noise has died down, yes? It's now you and your maker and your heart and your soul. Insert yourself, even as you prepare to decide who will be your next set of leaders for the next 5 years. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole. Our sign language interpreter was William Silla. Good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.